Yeah. Roberta in the truth zone, mic hitting raw. Spotlight shining, she exposing the flaw. Debunking the myth, breaking their facade. This is Glass City, respect the squad. On these NYC blocks where the skyline flex big. Roberta Glass slicing lies with a truth rig. Innocence frosters, your stories unravel. She's a map through the madness of gritty gravel. Glass don't bend and facts don't break. She's the storm that's called, you feel the quake. Exposing tales stitched with crooked seams. Justice in the lens, shattered fake dreams. Screams about killers, painted heroes in disguise. She burning propaganda with fire in her eyes. No glamour for the guilty, she call it straight. She backs victims, the voice stay awake. Stats and receipts, no spin, no clutter. Cold cases whisper, she cuts through the mutter. Truth's her tempo, don't confuse the beat. She standing for the real while you taking a seat. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to play. She's glass hard, break the false and save the day. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to...
Okay. Here we go. How is everybody? Happy Sunday. Hello, Dark Side of the Moon. Hello, Taterbug. Hello, Maestro. Hello, Kitties 1993. Hello, the great Tony Natalia is in the chat. Hello, Patricia Burns. Hello, Kath Dawn. Let me refresh. We're all here. So I wanted to just go over some of the facts of the NXIVM case today because it's being rewritten as it always has since the end of Keith Raniere's trial, actually all through Keith Raniere's trial and afterwards by The Vow. And now with this new podcast of Allison Mack's called Allison Mack's Life After NXIVM, produced by the CBC. We have a rewriting of the crimes of NXIVM. So today I'm going to go through an actual legal document describing what were the actual crimes of NXIVM, many of them hidden from the public. And I think you'll get a better sense as to why Keith Raniere was given an 120-year sentence. That's right. You heard that correctly. 120-year sentence in prison, of which he's serving now. So right now you're looking at, for those who are watching with me now, you're looking at the NXIVM defendants from the top left, Kathy Russell, the bookkeeper, Keith Raniere in the middle, top, Nancy Salzman, the number 2 in NXIVM, who really built the curriculum with Keith Raniere. Bottom left is Allison Mack. Bottom middle, Nancy Salzman's daughter, Lauren Salzman, and the Seagram's heiress, bottom right, Claire Bronfman, who, along with her sister, Sarah Bronfman, funded the cult to the tune of multi-millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. And of course, Claire Bronfman ended up serving, aside from Keith Raniere, the longest sentence, an 81-month sentence. I mean, she didn't serve all of it, but she was given an 81-month sentence, way beyond what her plea deal recommended, what the recommended sentence that came along with her plea deal. So starting with Nancy Salzman, this is a really important point. Before Keith Raniere ever went to trial, everyone pled out, starting with the number 2, Nancy Salzman, who pled out before the superseding indictment even came down. Nancy Salzman pled out on, let me see if I can get this correctly, on March 12th, 2019. And she pled guilty to racketeering conspiracy. Also altering documents in a trial, court documents, and we'll get into that today. And then everyone else just pled out one by one. Lauren Salzman next on March 25th, 2019. Allison Mack on April 8th, 2019. And then Kathy Russell and Claire Bronfman on April 19th, 2019. So leaving only one. After that, there was only one, Keith Raniere, to face trial. And this is a trial that I attended much of, but more than that, I attended every one of the pre-trial hearings in this case. So, including their plea hearings, although Allison Mack and Lauren Salzman pled out really in secret. It was done so quickly and so secretively that just really wasn't open to a public. By the time I heard about it, they'd already pled out, and I think most of the public, it was the same way. So let's get into this document. So the way that it's being portrayed, or was portrayed in the vow, was like this really powerful personal growth movement almost, instead of a criminal enterprise led by a criminal that went after their perceived enemies with a kind of cruelty, just relentless, like unrelenting, move forward towards anyone who spoke out about them. They sued them into submission and just had them just holding on to their sanity by the thinnest of threads. The punishment was for speaking out against NXIVM, and for people like Tony Natale, who suffered at the hands of NXIVM, and Rick Ross, and I'm not talking about the rapper Rick Ross, I'm talking about, of course, the OG, and really, I think the premier expert in cults, Rick Ross. They were sued by NXIVM and had to defend themselves to their, at their own expense for years. So we're going to get into all of that, the way that NXIVM got their enemies' financial documents, including Edgar Bronfman, Claire Bronfman's father. They had access to his emails. Lawyers who had once been involved in the cult, who had left, they had their financial documents, in addition to all the coercion that went on with DOS. And you'll see in this that it's amazing to me when you actually look at the stories that came out of this cult. How is every single woman, the assignment is always to seduce Keith Raniere, the cult leader, who supposedly had a 240 IQ. He was really, I think, probably has a pretty average IQ. That's debatable. Some former devotees still insist that he's brilliant. I've never seen any hint of this brilliance. I think he's cunning and calculating in the way that psychopaths often are. But I haven't seen any of this brilliance from Keith Raniere, this gobbledygooky talking points. So this document is from Keith Raniere's sentencing. So in 2018 and 19, Keith Raniere and 5 co-defendants were indicted for racketeering conspiracy, and related crimes, including trafficking, forced labor, alien smuggling, identity theft, and extortion. On June 19th, 2019, Keith Raniere was convicted on all 7 counts and all 11 racketeering acts submitted to the jury. So the jury was like, you're guilty of everything. They were like, Raniere's conviction falls into the following categories of illegal conduct. But before I say that, I just want to say something about the jury. In the beginning, when I would look at the jury, you really couldn't tell which way they were going. But by the end of the trial, every time Keith Raniere's lawyer got up, they just looked like they were smelling a bad smell. You knew it was not going to be a good verdict for Keith Raniere by the end of his trial. If you observed the jury, they had it with Keith Raniere and NXIVM by the end of the trial. So this is the exploitation of Camilla, Jane Doe, number 2, alien smuggling and visa fraud, the trafficking of, this is Camilla's sister, Daniela, Jane Doe, number 4. So this is the family from Mexico that, if you've been following my most recent NXIVM podcast, I've been talking about them in relation to Allison Mack and her crimes, trafficking of, and of course, Lauren Salzman and her crimes as well. So the trafficking of Daniela, Jane Doe, number 4, for labor and services, unlawful surveillance of individuals believed to be enemies of NXIVM and Raniere. This has become a lost part of NXIVM history, how NXIVM surveilled individuals believed to be enemies of NXIVM or Raniere. Obstruction of justice, trafficking, wire fraud, and extortion related to DOS. So DOS is the secret sorority inside NXIVM. DOS means, it's a Latin phrase for meaning dominant over submissive. Identity theft related to tax evasion. And the evidence presented at trial demonstrated that for over a decade, Raniere led a criminal enterprise. So the word cult was not used in court often. It came up as far as my memory is, as far as Mark Vicente, who's the filmmaker who got high up into NXIVM, who left one cult and then went into NXIVM. He directed the What the Bleep Do We Know documentary and then got recruited into NXIVM. He talked about how Keith Raniere wanted to expose cult as a meaningless word by making a documentary on a family and paying them $1 million and presenting this family as a cult, and then exposing at the end of their documentary that it was just a family. That was one of Keith Raniere's ideas. But cult really doesn't have any meaning legally in our legal system. It's not illegal to be involved in a cult, and it's certainly not illegal to start one. It's how so it's not that NXIVM was a cult, it's that they acted criminally over decades. So the evidence presented at trial demonstrated that for over a decade, Raniere led a criminal enterprise and relied on an inner circle of individuals to carry out his orders. Raniere and his co-conspirators recruited individuals into various purported self-help organizations that Raniere founded, including NXIVM and affiliated programs and DOS. Raniere demanded absolute commitment from those he recruited and those within his inner circle, including as to his teachings and ideology. And they quote one of his victims, Sylvie, "A lot of the time it doesn't make any sense, but we would all just agree. It was so rare that someone would disagree with the NXIVM curriculum. So rare." As Mark Vicente testified, that one couldn't question the higher ranks, and questioning Keith Raniere was seen as a very, very bad thing. Lauren Salzman testified that you would be shunned if you questioned the NXIVM curriculum or the teachings of Keith Raniere. Raniere and his co-conspirators maintained control over the enterprise by, among other means, obtaining sensitive information about members and associates of the enterprise, including shame and guilt, in order to influence and control members and associates of the enterprise, isolating associates and others from friends and family, and making them dependent on the enterprise for their financial well-being and legal status within the United States, and encouraging associates and others to take expensive NXIVM courses and incur debt to do so. Members of the enterprise recruited and groomed partners for Raniere, both within and outside DOS. Many were themselves in relationships with Raniere that involved pledges of loyalty, penances for ethical breaches, and collateral. And so this gets into the child predation portion of the criminal acts of NXIVM, also so rarely talked about in terms of this criminal, diabolical cult. So in September 2005, the defendant, meaning Keith Raniere, began a sexual relationship with Camilla, then 15. Camilla and her family had arrived in Clifton Park. So this is around Albany, New York, that area. Had arrived in Clifton Park at the defendant's invitation, meaning Keith Raniere's invitation, and he arranged for her to work as a maid in Nancy Salzman's house. There's another buried part of NXIVM, which was a distance away from her siblings. What did Nancy Salzman think having a 15-year-old child as a maid in her home? I mean, she's being presented as a victim, mainly because the Vow in their part 2 wanted an interview with her, and so they were happy to hide away her biggest crimes. And the fact that in her house, they found a shoebox containing $500,000. Let's take a look at that. Hold on a second. There it is. That's part of the government's evidence. So you can see it says 63 on the side. Those watching. There's that's what that looked like. But Nancy Salzman is really being presented like, oh, Keith Raniere was so mean to me. So mean. She had a 15-year-old girl working as her maid. Illegally, by the way, brought over illegally. We'll get into that. So before I go any further, I don't want to just read the entire time. I do want to show you a little bit of the media around Nancy Salzman. Take a look.
Very kind in the beginning. And he gave me everything I wanted. Like, he gave me a company. He gave me tools. He let me teach. He let me do everything I loved. This is the world the way I want it, and this is the world the way it is. If these line up, remember what we call that? Happiness.
You're always tend to go for it. Very different choices than most people.
Mike? So I have someone who is, in the external world, it would look like telling me something I already know. I can.
11th, 2009, Mrs. Keith, after his meeting.
In the future, it might be good if I'm speaking. Let me speak,
I'm sorry.
and then and then say that afterwards. In any situation.
What? Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. Because what I'm about to say is so brilliant. She actually did, I think, the right thing, which is you want to put the time date stamp as quickly as is in the beginning of any kind of audio recording as you can. You don't want to wait till he's all the way done and then bury it in the bottom. She did the right thing there. Not to defend her, but what do you want to hear? Like, you'd be like, what is this audio tape of Keith Raniere's gobbledygook? And then you'd have to wait till the whole end of the audio recording to find out when it was recorded. So silly. It's just ridiculous. It's just exercising his power and control. But she had a lot of power and control. Remember, she was number 2. She made a lot of money on this thing.
Situation you can learn.
I was terrified of Keith. Whenever
I don't think. Does anybody really think she was terrified of Keith? She's she built this with him. She built this curriculum. I haven't seen no evidence that she was terrified of Keith. And she seemed to know that it was criminal. She was like willing to make the best deal she could make for herself and get out. And then plead victimhood. And that seems to be all the rage now. Plead out and claim victimhood. The only one who hasn't is Claire Bronfman, who still says it was great. She refuses to disavow Raniere. And with Allison Mack, it seems like she disavowed Raniere at her sentencing somewhat and is now kind of retaking up his cause, saying that there were great things in NXIVM and to help people. And she didn't know it was illegal. Come on, really? Really? What do people think of that? Was Allison Mack really surprised?
I was in a meeting with other people, he acted like I wasn't there. He would correct me whenever I said anything. He purposely disempowered me. So when he was around, I never opened my mouth.
You know, when...
And then Mark Vicente, who's like, I'm worried might go into another cult. So he was in the cult of Ramtha, then he was in NXIVM. And I'm worried that he might go into another cult after this. He's making excuses here for Nancy Salzman. Nancy Salzman used a very powerful tool of neurolinguistic programming, and she held it over other people. And Mark Vicente made money on this too. And so did Sarah Edmondson. They all did very well from NXIVM. They didn't end up broke like so many other people. Like they're people they victimized in it. But it seems to be all the rage to rewrite what your part in the cult and then just say, I'm a victim, I didn't know. And rewrite history.
When Nancy Salzman said that Keith Raniere was abusive, she began to come to that understanding. And that's kind of what I was trying to tell her, not kind of, that's what I was telling her in January 2016, is I began to notice the way he treated her. And I was telling her that, but she couldn't actually take it in, which I think is pretty common. When you adore somebody that much, you can't actually see what's going on in front of you.
Really? What did she see when she saw a 15-year-old as a maid, an illegal 15-year-old as a maid in her home? And what did she think when she gave up her daughters to be with Keith Raniere and handed them over to him? She's a co-monster in this, and Mark Vicente's not getting it. So we may return to a little bit more of that later, but that'll just give you a little bit of a flavor for some of the apologist media that's coming out around this cult. Camilla and her family had arrived in, so this is Camilla again, Nancy Salzman's 15-year-old maid living in her home illegally, and also the victim of Keith Raniere. So this is where the child predation charges came from. Camilla and her family had arrived in Clifton Park at the defendant's invitation, and he arranged for her to work as a maid in Nancy Salzman's house, which was a distance away from her siblings. Camilla lived in a house with other members of the NXIVM community, including Monica Duran, a woman who, like Camilla, would later become a first-line master in DOS. So the way DOS works is, so you have to have 6 women under you, and those 6 women have 6 women under them. How they never thought anything was odd when it's like 666, the mark of the devil, but okay. So let me just show you Monica really quickly. She's in, this is another, more of the government's evidence. She's on the bottom left here of this paper in that wheel. This is a wheel. So Camilla is blacked out because she was a minor at the time. Daniela Padilla, who was the one that Allison Mack refers to and kind of blames her participation in DOS. She talks about her wearing a piece of permanent jewelry and her devotion to Keith. Nikki Klein, who thankfully got out very late from the cult, but better late than never. Loretta Garza, Rosa Laura Junco, again, Monica Duran, just going clockwise, Allison Mack, and Lauren Salzman, excuse me. Is everybody following? I hope I'm not losing anybody in this. I know it's a lot of information. So, on November 2nd, 2005, and again on November 2024, 2005, the defendant took photographs of Camilla constituting CP. Several of the photographs depict Camilla laying on her back, on a bed, fully nude. At least 5 photographs depict close-ups. Trafficking of Daniela, as proven at trial between March 10th and April 2012, Raniere, Lauren Salzman, and others trafficked Daniela, this is Camilla's sister, for labor and services by confining her to a room for nearly 2 years. Well, why did they confine her to a room for nearly 2 years? Because she committed the crime of having feelings for another man that wasn't Raniere. That was her great crime. And what was very highlighted in the opening statement by Tanya Hajar in Keith Raniere's trial was that she talked about Daniela being confined to this room, but she made a note to say that the door was open. I think she was anticipating that Keith Raniere's defense was going to be like, look, Daniela could have left at any time. But she's in a house where her parents, and for 2 years in a room, confined to a room with just a piece of foam on the floor, and given really not, an empty room with her teeth, tooth rotting out of the back of her mouth, and every day writing Keith Raniere letters saying, I'll be better, I'll fix my ethical breaches. And Keith Raniere insisted that women keep their hair long and keep themselves very skinny. And when Daniela cut her hair, Keith Raniere demanded that she not be let out until her hair grew back. So she was in there for 2 years, but they told her that they would throw her back to Mexico without her birth certificate, without any papers, without any money, and without the support of her family. So you can say it's an open door, but there were so many threats and so much and so much brainwashing before she even got in that room that whether the door was locked or unlocked, really, it was already basically locked by her brainwashing, by wanting the support of her family, wanting the things that were being held from her, the support of her family, her papers, including her birth certificate, and money. If she, she's great to escape. She eventually escaped with nothing and led a kind of hand-to-mouth existence, working for people who were kind enough to employ her with no papers. She eventually hired a lawyer who got back her birth certificate and her paper, but, her papers. But she worked for years in Mexico, hand-to-mouth, doing menial jobs after escaping out of this room. And now when she testified, she came in like a boss woman, just strode up to the, I'll just never forget her, this kind of stride she had, this really confident walk to the witness stand. And she gave her testimony very confidently. And at that time, she was running a factory. She was like I guess what the young people would call a girl boss now. So she'd done really well for herself. But it was really, so the end of her torture wasn't over when she escaped, is my point. It was such a hard life that she led in Mexico with no papers, no support, and really relying on the kindness of the few people that would hire her. And it's not very common to get hired in Mexico. It's hard to do without papers. Raniere initiated a relationship with Daniela, Camilla's sister. So the 15-year-old's sister. So Danny is older than Camilla. When Danny was 18. After Danny re-entered the United States in 2004, she began to work for Raniere. So we're going pre the room, okay? She began to work for Raniere, including by cleaning, organizing his books, digitalizing his music collection, and compiling reports, summarizing lengthy textbooks on various topics. So Daniela is really the genius. If there's ever a genius in NXIVM, it's Daniela, who read all these complicated books and would summarize them for Keith Raniere, so Keith Raniere could sound smart. And that's a theme that goes on in NXIVM, where Keith Raniere, like a vampire, sucks out people's talents and ideas and takes them, and labor, and takes them for his own, and presents them to the world like his own ideas when they're from books and summarized from books, and really and he can only really understand them because Daniela has made him cliff notes. As he did in his relationship with other women, Raniere controlled Daniela's diet and weight, insisted that Daniela keep the relationship secret. When she was 20, Daniela became pregnant by Raniere, and Pam Kafritz, who is really like Raniere's Maxwell, paid for Daniela to terminate it and instructed Daniela to lie about the identity of the father to medical staff. After Daniela, okay, so I just described her in the other room. After she had feelings for another man, she was confined to her room for nearly 2 years, during which she went months without human contact. She talked about listening to her family, living life without her. Family members left meals for Daniela outside her door. Daniela was denied prompt medical care and slept on a foam pad on the floor. During this time, Daniela wrote hundreds of letters to Raniere with various proposals to heal her purported ethical breaches. Daniela believed that if she stopped writing, she would be sent to Mexico without money or her identification documents. Lauren Salzman reported to Raniere regarding Daniela's progress. So Lauren Salzman was really the only person that Daniela dealt with during that time. But Raniere frequently told Salzman that Daniela was game playing and manipulating Salzman and needed to stay in the room longer. Also, one of the pieces of evidence we heard in court was Daniela's mother begging Raniere to let Daniela out. and she didn't get anywhere with him. Raniere forbade Lauren Salzman from telling Daniela anything or giving her any information about what was going on the outside with anybody. At one point, when Daniela cut off her hair, right, I told you all this, she would have to stay there until it grew back. That's what Keith Raniere decided. Sometimes, this is from her testimony, sometimes I would beg, please let me know. I didn't know why. Just let me out. Nobody cared. My family didn't. Nobody cared. So it was also knowing that nobody wanted me. I'm in a world where nobody cares, where I'm losing my life. It was clearly never going to end. In approximately February 2012, after considering ending it all, Daniela left the room. Daniela was then driven to Mexico at Raniere's direction and was told that unless she completed book reports for Raniere, she would not receive her birth certificate. Luckily, Daniela was done with that and ultimately obtained a copy of her birth certificate with the assistance of an attorney working for a human rights commission. So this alien smuggling is a big part of the crimes of NXIVM. Keith Raniere and his co-conspirators participated in efforts to recruit and secure immigration status for non-citizens so that they could work in one or more NXIVM-affiliated organizations, or as one of the women he preyed upon. Among the individuals that Raniere and his co-conspirators assisted in entering or remaining in the United States unlawfully were siblings Mariana, this is the same Mexican family, Mariana, Daniela, Adrian, and Camila. By 2008, all four siblings were out of status and unlawfully in the United States. In 2004, Raniere arranged for Daniela to enter the United States unlawfully using a false identification document with the last name and date of birth of Ashana Shinona, a deceased woman. Daniela's parents had paid for her to take a NXIVM course in Monterrey, Mexico, and encouraged Daniela to join the NXIVM community in Albany, New York. On October 26, 2004, Daniela was denied entry into the United States and returned home to Mexico. Raniere instructed Daniela to fly to Toronto, Canada, enter the United States with a false sheriff's ID card containing the name and date of birth of a deceased woman who, according to Keith Raniere, bore a resemblance to Daniela. And on December 24, 2004, so the day before Christmas, Daniela met Kathy Russell, the bookkeeper, at the border. Russell handed Daniela the false sheriff's ID bearing the name Lisa Chinona and drove Daniela across the border into the United States and back to the defendant's community in Clifton Park, New York. Between approximately 2001 and September 2018, Raniere directed his co-defendant Kathy Russell to lease 120 Victory Way, a property in Clifton Park, New York. The residence was used to house Camila, who did not have legal status within the United States. Russell leased the property for over 7 years under an assumed name, and each year paid the rent in cash and in full. Mariana, so this is Camila and Danny's sister. Raniere and his co-conspirators made significant efforts to assist Mariana in entering and remaining in the United States. Mariana arrived in the United States in about 2003, shortly after completing high school in order to study the NXIVM curriculum with Raniere. In 2004, Mariana began a relationship with Raniere and Pam Fritz, so his Maxwell, who eventually dies of cancer. Sometime thereafter, Mariana's status in the United States on a visitor's visa expired. Notwithstanding that Mariana had been living with Raniere without legal status in the NXIVM community for nearly a decade, Claire Bronfman falsely claimed that Mariana had always been compliant with U.S. immigration laws and that Mariana had been employed by her father's rock drilling company in Mexico. So Raniere and his co-conspirators engaged in unlawful surveillance and investigation of his perceived enemies. The targets of these efforts included federal judges overseeing litigation in which NXIVM was a party, high-ranking politicians, reporters who had published articles critical of Raniere or NXIVM, NXIVM's own lawyers, legal adversaries and their families, and an accountant, James Loperfido, who worked for an attorney who had previously done work for NXIVM, and Edgar Bronfman Sr., the father of Claire Bronfman. Seagram's, the head of, also ran Universal for some time. On multiple occasions, Bronfman approached, meaning Universal Studios, the movie studios. On multiple occasions, Bronfman approached Stephen Herbitz, a colleague of her father whom she believed to have political influence, in an attempt to persuade him to help her intimidate individuals perceived to be hostile to NXIVM or Raniere. Between August 2005 and October 2008, Raniere directed Daniela to obtain the usernames and passwords for email accounts belonging to individuals they perceived to be NXIVM enemies in order to gain access to those individuals' emails accounts and monitor their communications. After the publication of the October 2003 Forbes article in which Edgar Bronfman was quoted as calling NXIVM a cult, Raniere considered Edgar Bronfman an enemy of his and of NXIVM's. As a result, Raniere tasked Daniela, with creating key logging software in order to access and monitor Edgar Bronfman's email account. Bronfman installed the key logging software onto her father's computer, and Daniela was thereafter able to access Edgar Bronfman's email account. For years, Daniela reported the results to Raniere. At Raniere's direction, Daniela also created and installed key logging software on the computer of James Loperfido, an accountant who had worked for Joseph O'Hara, an attorney who had previously done work for NXIVM. Daniela thereafter regularly emailed the results of her key logging software, which reflected Loperfido's computer activity, to Raniere. In November 2008, Raniere also enlisted Daniela to install key logging software on Daniela's sister Mariana's computer after Raniere suspected Mariana of rekindling a relationship with an ex-boyfriend. So here's, of course, the hypocrisy of Raniere. He can be sleeping with everyone, but every woman has to be faithful, even emotionally faithful to him. Through installation of the key logging software, Daniela provided Raniere with her sister's Facebook password. And so you see that Claire Bronfman is spying on her father and handing over, and Daniela is spying on her sister. So very much ripping families apart and making them loyal to Raniere and the cult above all else. On behalf of NXIVM, Bronfman hired several private firms, including Canaprobe and Interfor, in order to investigate perceived enemies of NXIVM and Raniere. Between approximately 2007 and 2009, Canaprobe sent the results of purported bank sweeps for bank accounts and balance information belonging to NXIVM's adversaries. I mean, should that be is that legal to do, to hire private firms to get your perceived enemies' banking information? And nothing happened to Canaprobe and Interfor for doing this. On March 27, 2018, a search warrant was executed on the residence of Nancy Salzman. Among the items recovered was a large box containing what appears to be private banking information of many individuals perceived to be NXIVM enemies, including Edgar Bronfman, Joseph O'Hara, Rick Ross, the cult expert, and others. So let's listen to what Rick Ross has to say about fighting this cult and actually going to trial with this cult. Hey, Taterbug. Thanks for keeping this out there, Roberta. You're so welcome. Thanks for moderating and listening, Tater. Appreciate your support. So what? Share video file. Hold on one second.
The lawsuit was dismissed before he was arrested, but that's how long he continued to harass me. And he wanted me to take these papers down from being online, but I never did. And they were used by so many people that were traumatized by Keith Raniere, families, individuals that he manipulated, who eventually would leave. Some would actually go through a kind of breakdown where they would be hospitalized and then leave the group. And then many of them would call me and say, thank you for having those papers online, that those doctors helped me to understand that I wasn't crazy. Those papers helped me to understand that I'm not crazy, that I wasn't crazy, and that this was something that was a direct byproduct of the training that I was subjected to within NXIVM.
So what he's saying is that he kept up some of the NXIVM curriculum on his website, that he was sued into, they wanted him to take it down. And people who had their minds broken by NXIVM could show their doctors that they were really broken by this curriculum of NXIVMs, and also neurolinguistic programming and undue influence. The undue influence of the cult had really worked into the curriculum.
And if I hadn't been able to read that and understand that, it would have been even harder for me to recover. So that's why Raniere wanted those papers to be taken down, because he did not want people to know what he was doing, which was deliberate, which was methodical, which was systematic.
Okay, that is the great Rick Ross, cult expert, who was enemy of NXIVM and sued, along with Tony Natale and many others who spoke out against NXIVM. All right. So this part has all been really just kind of glossed over and hidden. I mean, how much more diabolical than having your hiring firms, and all backed by Claire Bronfman's money, to get your bank I mean, what's more personal than your bank records and your emails? So Raniere obstructed justice by altering videotapes that were produced in discovery by federal lawsuit in New Jersey. This is something that Mark Vicente testified to. So Nancy Salzman would make claims that NXIVM could heal people of their ailments, and they took all those parts out, all those false claims out, to hand over in discovery. So they were handing over, they said these are unaltered videotapes. And Mark Vicente, in his testimony, talked about how they use sandpaper to make the videotapes look old and original. In 2003, NXIVM and affiliated entities filed suit against Stephen Franco, a former NXIVM student, and Rick Ross. The lawsuit alleged copyright infringement and centered on a claim that Franco had violated a non-disclosure agreement by providing NXIVM course materials to Rick Ross, a cult deprogrammer who published the course materials on his website. In around 2008, Franco's attorneys requested the production of certain videotapes in support of their claim that the NXIVM curriculum contained false statements and violated certain state consumer protection laws. So this is where you have to ask, what was Mark Vicente thinking editing this stuff out? What were these cult members, when they were doing this illegal stuff, what are they thinking? So I'm sure, I would think that there was a deal made with the government, with Mark Vicente, that in exchange for his testimony, they wouldn't charge him for this, because he could have been charged for this. Nancy Salzman was, but in June 2008, Raniere tasked Mark Vicente, among others, to alter videotapes and remove certain segments from them without having the videotapes appear altered. Vicente was provided with videotapes to remove content, including segments in which Nancy Salzman made unsubstantiated health claims about NXIVM's curriculum. These altered videotapes were then produced in discovery by NXIVM attorneys with the false claim that they were provided in unedited fashion. Hey guys, these are just like the unedited videotapes. Wow, isn't it strange that the curriculum you remember taking from Nancy Salzman isn't here anymore? There's none of these false medical claims in it anymore. So now we're getting into DOS. In late 2015, this is much publicized, but the real cruelty of it has been much publicized, but Raniere's part is often downplayed. Aside from Raniere, all members of DOS were female. Raniere gave himself the title Grand Master. Raniere directed slaves, direct slaves. The first line were Camilla, Daniela Padilla, so not Camilla's sister, but Daniela Padilla, Nikki Klein, Loretza Garza, Rosa Laura Junco, Monica Duran, Allison Mack, and Lauren Salzman. Let's take a look at that together. So this is the first line of DOS Masters. Each of these first line slaves recruited their own slaves by approaching young women and falsely describing DOS as a secret women's empowerment group or sorority. Raniere instructed the first line never to disclose his participation in and leadership of DOS. And it brings to mind why Allison Mack thought it was such a good idea that she take responsibility for the branding ceremony and that it was her idea. Prospective slaves were required to provide collateral, including damaging confessions about themselves and loved ones, truthful or not, rights to financial assets, and explicit photographs and videos to prevent them from leaving the group or disclosing its existence to others. Through DOS, Raniere used the first line to recruit other women to make a collateralized vow of obedience to their master and by extension to Raniere, and then required these slaves to perform labor, take naked photographs, and in some cases to engage in acts with Raniere. Raniere at one point told Camilla that it would be good for her to own her own toy slave for him, that she could groom and use as a tool to pleasure him. Raniere also instructed Daniela Padilla, Loretza Garza, Rosa Laura Junco, and Camilla to find a young virgin successor for Raniere. The first line of DOS met 3 times a week for about 10 hours a week. At the start of each meeting, the first line took a fully nude photograph of themselves and sent it to Raniere. In the meetings that Raniere attended, Raniere sat on a chair, dressed, while the first line sat on the floor beneath him naked. Raniere engaged in relationships with the first line, occasionally at the same time, and directed them to purchase a sorority house, which would contain BDSM equipment, including a human-sized cage. And we saw receipts of all these kind of purchases. So when I hear Allison Mack's new husband, Frank Mink, say, oh no, this wasn't like it wasn't degenerate, the thing that Allison Mack was involved in. It wasn't like Epstein. I think, what has your wife hidden from you, and why is your research so poor? It was very clearly degenerate, very degenerate. And the purchases that we saw presented in court were very disturbing, dark and disturbing. These components of DOS, along with Raniere's leadership of DS, were deliberately concealed from recruits. Raniere and other DOS masters recruited women as slaves into DOS by deliberately concealing Raniere's role. Women were recruited in DOS from California, Mexico, Canada, and elsewhere, and DOS masters used encrypted messaging applications located overseas, including Telegram and Signal, just like Karen Reed, guys. The favorite app of criminals to communicate with their slaves and to collect collateral. After women were recruited into DOS and their collateral was collected, the DOS slaves were told that they needed to provide additional, this is really important, additional collateral each month. So your collateral doesn't end when you join. You have to up your collateral every month. DOS slaves, including Sylvie, Nicole, and Jay, among others, believed that if they did not obey their masters, their collateral would be released. So this is where we get into blackmail. Raniere and DOS masters used a variety of means to coerce their slaves into submission in accordance with Raniere's instructions. DOS slaves were required to be branded with a symbol that, unknown to the slaves, represented Raniere's own initials. DOS slaves were also controlled in a number of other ways, including physical isolation, forced participation in readiness drills, requirement to seek permission from Raniere or their master to sleep or eat. So they call it sleep deprivation and extremely restrictive diets. At Raniere's instructions, so they go through the whole video, the whole audio tape that was presented to the government, not by Allison Mack, but by her slave under her, India Oxenberg. So India Oxenberg gave this tape to the government. But let's take another listen of it. I think it's a little easier than me reading it. This is where Allison Mack and Keith Raniere take a walk and come up and are discussing the branding. Take a listen.
Keith and Allison, what's the date? The 10th. No, the 9th. January 9th, 6:59 a.m. talking about branding on a wall.
So, I think doing the actual brand in an orderly fashion, each of the 7 strokes, having a certain ritualization, maybe each of the strokes has something that's said with them. And maybe repeated after the stroke is done.
So like somebody says the thing while the stroke is being done, and then the person that's getting it done repeats it afterwards?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, you guys come up with something and propose it to me.
Okay.
Well, because you've done it, so what would have been most meaningful, deep, surrendering, focusing for you?
I think it probably having it whispered in my ear and then me repeating it out loud. And then having it whispered in my ear and then me repeating it out loud.
Well, ask the others. It's not all you.
Oh, I thought you were asking me.
No.
He did ask her. He did ask her. And then when she answers, he puts her down for being so selfish, for only thinking of herself. Some serious manipulation going on there.
I said all of you guys who've gone through it.
Yes. Okay.
There's a little break in the audio here.
The other thing is, you guys did it and you weren't completely because you had a outsider and a guy doing it, whoever. Do you think the person who's being should be completely and sort of held to the table like a sort of almost like a sacrifice? I don't know if that's a feeling of submission, you know?
So I have a question. Did Daniela Roberts do? Here Keith Raniere refers to the brander as a guy, but I was under the impression that she's no longer a doctor, so I don't have to call her, but she was at the time Dr. Daniela Roberts, now lost her medical license. Danielle Roberts, excuse me, did the branding, but here Keith Raniere refers to it as a guy. And yes, she was clothed, but is he doing that because he knows it's being taped and he wants to obscure the identity of the person doing this branding with a cauterizing tool? I mean, this is so unlike a tattoo. I mean, you could smell the smell of burning when it went on, and when you look at the actual brand, it's so, even months later, it's still so red and angry. For Allison Mack, it was a real ego boost that she could withstand this pain. And she was like to the other women, like, what? You just disassociate yourself. What? No biggie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. I thought maybe you would know. Great, Tony. Natalie says the first brands were done by a guy. Thank you. You just don't know with Keith Raniere because he's always so aware of obscuring things for law enforcement. Good to know. Thank you. What happened to him? Did he lose his medical license? Did he have a medical license and did he lose it, Tony?
It also, of course, videoing it from different angles or whatever gives collateral. Mm-hmm. So probably should be a more vulnerable position type of a thing. Back, legs slightly spur, legs spread straight, like feet being held to the side of the table, hands probably above the head being held, almost like tied down, like a sacrificial whatever.
Can you imagine having this conversation? Yeah, just like a sacrificial whatever. Okay, great. Whatever you want done. Great Vanguard. Oh, he's so schlubby. He's such a schlubby nothing burger. Tony says the first guy who did it was an artist who focused more on that type of branding. Oh. So he didn't have much to lose, I guess.
And the person should ask.
Can you imagine going to medical school only to lose it for this? I mean, I fully support the fact that she lost her medical license. She should have. But all that work gone out the window because you get involved with this, with Keith Raniere and NXIVM and doing this kind of stuff. I mean, she probably saved a lot of other patients from being victimized by someone who was unwell, had a dark personality.
To be branded.
Okay.
Should say, please brand me, it would be an honor, or something like that. And an honor I want to wear for the rest of my life. I don't know.
Okay.
And they should probably say that before they're held down, so it doesn't seem like they're being coerced.
Okay.
I mean, we know they're being coerced, but we don't want it to seem like they're being coerced because we have tons of collateral on them.
I don't know. Those are just thoughts.
Okay.
Those are just thoughts with this purpose. It's just such a creepy tape with a purposeful kind of insistent sounds of steps going on under it. So near the end of this document, or the important parts of this document, this is also another important thing that's being hidden. DOS Masters also benefited financially from recruiting. So the new podcast, Allison Mack after NXIVM, goes through great pains to talk about all the money Allison Mack lost, but they don't talk about the money she made from it. Not that it was huge, but she was making money from it. DOS Masters also benefited financially from recruiting and maintaining slaves. DOS slaves were coerced into providing labor and services for their masters under the threat of release of their collateral. So she gained services and labor and services from those under her, including editing and transcription work, photographs, of course, naked, and other tasks. Masters were expected to receive approximately 40 hours of labor each week from their slaves. According to the testimony of Lawrence Salzman, Raniere decided that, quote, if we each had 6 slaves who had 6 slaves under them, you would have 40 hours, approximately 36, but approximately 40 hours of work per week for life from these individuals. So it's for, indentured servitude. Sylvie, who had worked, speaking of indentured servitude, let's get into Claire Bronfman and what she did to Sylvie. Had worked for Claire Bronfman for nearly 10 years. When Monica Duran, a first-line master in DOS, approached Sylvie about joining DOS. So Bronfman brought Sylvie over here with a big promise of a big salary and then paid her pennies once she asked for $200 to go to the doctor, and Claire Bronfman denied her $200 to see a doctor because all their health was deteriorating under this low-calorie vegan diet and just the stress of this little sleep and lots of work. At that time, Sylvie had recently been married to another member of the NXIVM community. Both Raniere and Bronfman at various points instructed Sylvie to not have relations with her husband for the first 2 years of their marriage. Duran approached Sylvie and invited Sylvie to a secret project that Duran said had nothing to do with NXIVM. Sylvie was told that in order to learn more, she had to provide collateral, which was something capable of destroying her relationships with her family. Sylvie provided a stamped letter addressed to her parents, falsely confessing to being a prostitute. Sylvie also provided a photograph of herself as collateral. Soon thereafter, Duran gave Sylvie an assignment to seduce Raniere. Sylvie was assigned to send Raniere photographs every day. So naked photographs every day. Sylvie was not attracted to Raniere and found him creepy. Duran later arranged for Sylvie to meet Raniere at a house where Raniere took Sylvie upstairs, instructed her to undress and lie down on the bed. Raniere then performed unwanted acts on Sylvie and took close-up photographs of Sylvie with Sylvie's phone. Sylvie felt disgusted by this encounter and acquiesced to it only because she believed her collateral would be released if she did not obey Raniere. The photographs were then sent to Duran using Telegram, an encrypted messaging service. After Sylvie completed the assignment that she had been given, Sylvie deleted the photograph in disgust and shame. The next day, Duran called Sylvie, panicked, because the photographs had been deleted from Duran's phone. Duran told Sylvie that she would have to go back to Raniere and have him take new photographs, which Sylvie did. Oh, can you imagine finding this guy so disgusting and creepy and you think you've done this assignment and they're like, nope, the fact that you deleted it in shame, you're going to have to go back and he's going to have to, this guy you find creepy is going to have to take these photographs again. Nicole, this is someone whose testimony I was in court for, an actress in her early 30s and is under Allison Mack in this DOS thing, began taking NXIVM classes in 2015, including acting classes with Allison Mack. In February 2016, Mack invited Nicole to join a women's mentorship group, but asked that Nicole first provide collateral. At that time, Nicole was living in Brooklyn, New York. Nicole was told and believed that the organization was woman only and had no connection to NXIVM. So she had come from LA, is my memory. After Mack made some suggestions of sufficient collateral, Nicole wrote a series of letters falsely alleging SA by a family member and other damaging allegations. Totally untrue. So these allegations didn't have to be true. They just have to be devastating should they be released. After Mack assured Nicole that the letters would be locked in a box where nobody would see them, Nicole provided the letters and an explicit video of herself to Mack. Once Nicole had provided this collateral, Mack told Nicole about DOS, referring to it as the vow. Nicole agreed to become Mack's slave. While Nicole agreed to join DOS, she was not aware and was not told that she would later be required to provide additional collateral, which on a monthly basis, including credit card authorizations and the right to her grandmother's wedding ring. Mack directed Nicole to be celibate for 6 months and subsequently assigned Nicole to contact Raniere. One night when Nicole was staying with Mack in Clifton Park, New York, Raniere called Mack. Mack told Nicole to go outside and meet Raniere, which Nicole obeyed. Raniere blindfolded Nicole, led her to a car, and drove her to a house. Raniere then led Nicole, still blindfolded, through some trees inside a building where he ordered her to undress. She was tied to a table. Another person in the room, unknown to Nicole, performed acts on Nicole. Raniere asked Nicole if Nicole was okay. Nicole said that she was Raniere asked if Nicole was okay and told Nicole that she was very brave and not to tell anyone what had happened. Nicole believed that if she left DOS, her collateral would be released. Unknown to Nicole, the individual who performed acts on her was Camilla. A photograph recovered from Camilla's Google account reflects a photograph of the table on which Nicole had been tied, along with a video camera that was pointed in the direction of the table. That was shown as evidence in court. Nicole met the other DOS slaves under Allison Mack, including India Oxenberg, Michelle, and Danielle. Throughout Nicole's time in DOS, Mack regularly required slaves to pose for nude photographs, either as assignments or collateral. And those photographs were sent to Raniere. Mack also assigned her other slaves, India, Michelle, and Danielle, with the task of seducing Raniere. So she now knows of 4 people who've all had the same task. And Allison Mack isn't thinking anything. She still thinks Raniere's good and that there's nothing odd with this. Really? I mean, I just find this so hard to believe. And I think this is just part of Allison Mack's really negative impulses towards women and jealousy towards women, that she could punish them through DOS, through this. There's just in no world do I believe that Allison Mack thought that couldn't see that this wasn't exploitative and wasn't for Raniere's benefit. And that I just can't believe that she really thinks she was helping these women all in the same way. They all have the same issues. Really? Mack expected to receive and did receive financial opportunities and privileges as a result of her slaves' compliance with orders, including her orders to engage in acts with Raniere. Jay is an actress and a model who began taking NXIVM classes in or about 2016, during which time she became friendly with India, one of Mack's slaves. In approximately November 2016, India recruited Jay into DOS, and Jay was told DOS was a women's-only organization. After several months, Mack in India gave Jay a special assignment. Again, another person, to seduce Raniere and have Raniere take a photograph of Jay to prove that she'd done it. Mack told Jay, "I give you permission to enjoy it." And Jay understood the assignment as directed to have relations with Raniere. Jay asked Mack directly if Raniere was a part of DOS, which Mack denied. So she's lying flat out to the women under her. Jay refused to engage and act with Raniere before leaving DOS in approximately May 2007. Jay captured images of collateral belonging to other slaves, believing she could protect the release of her own collateral by having other DOS members' collateral as leverage. So it wasn't in a locked box. How did Jay have access to it? If it was in a lockbox, it wasn't. The existence of DOS became known within the community in early June 2017 when the husband of Sarah Edmondson publicly confronted NXIVM members about DOS. Immediately after the existence of DOS was publicly disclosed, Raniere directed the first line of DOS to lie about his involvement in DOS, as well as to compile materials related to DOS and secure them. Raniere also instructed the first line to collect positive testimonials about DOS and create a DOS website. So here, this calls into question Allison Mack's story that she just took responsibility for the branding ceremony on her own without direction from Raniere, when the government's arguing that Raniere had already directed Allison Mack to lie, and she was following his instructions, and all the first line masters of DOS to lie about the way that the group was created. In July and September 2017, Raniere and Claire Bronfman received letters from separate DOS victims requesting the return or destruction of their collateral, which included descriptions of the collateral. Bronfman hired private investigators and a public relations firm to rehabilitate DOS's public image and distance it from NXIVM. So had Vanessa Gregoriadis, the one of the two podcasters behind the Allison Mack After NXIVM podcast, and the journalist who wrote the piece in the New York Magazine, which is really a love letter piece to NXIVM, argued with me in court that Claire Bronfman couldn't have any knowledge of the dark side of NXIVM because she was the money person and was kept from her. Had Vanessa Gregoriadis done her research a little deeper, she would have seen that she knew that she was receiving letters from DOS victims talking about what they were doing. I mean, it's just not real. It's not a realistic view that Claire Bronfman was kept from any of the darkness of NXIVM, especially since she had financially and exploited Sylvie for her labor for years. She was the dark side of NXIVM, part of it. Bronfman also made attempts to have criminal charges instituted against Sarah Edmondson. In September 2017, Raniere and Bronfman were alerted to the fact that the New York Times would shortly be publishing an article about DOS. Bronfman and Raniere drafted intimidating cease and desist letters to DOS victims that Bronfman and Raniere feared would publicly disclose the existence of DOS. These letters were later sent to several DOS victims by attorneys in Mexico. For instance, on September 13, 2017, Raniere sent Claire Bronfman the following email with the subject line, "What are your thoughts, Ms. DOS victims? I am the chief attorney of a criminal investigation in Mexico of more than 20 individuals tied together in a cooperative, destructive network. These individuals, including yourself, have been acting against individuals who participate in the NXIVM corporation community. You are currently connected to the criminal investigations involving fraud, coercion, extortion, harassment, stalking, theft of trade secrets, which includes use of trade secrets compromised, among other things, client lists, criminal conspiracy, computer crimes, and corporate espionage. I strongly suggest that you cease and desist, undo, reverse, cancel, and retract participation in all past, present, and future conversations, conference calls, meetings, news media, social media, blogs, or websites relating to this subject matter until the criminal matters are resolved. You should do everything in your power to effect this. Your best course of action is to minimize your exposure. In addition to the above, is to repair all damages to parties you have acted against, reconciling with them, and fully cooperating with the criminal investigations. In this regard, I can help you, for I represent some of your victims and have access to others. I know, so they're trying to get what they know, trying to get their testimony and what they know so they can head it off. I know that people in the media can be coercive, abusive in their power. People in the media can be coercive and abusive in their power, but not Raniere and Claire Bronfman. I know that people in the media and also bloggers and the like can be coercive, abusive in their power and force unwitting, uninformed participants to be complicit in situations and potentially even waive rights. You still have the ability to pull away from all participation with these people. Please contact me as soon as possible. Less than 30 minutes later, Bronfman emailed the text of the email to Alejandro Betancourt, a co-conspirator based in Mexico. The following day, September 14, 2017, the reference DOS victim received an email from an attorney in Mexico, Ricardo Almedo of Almedo, Gaxiola, and Abogandos, with the subject line, Causa Penal on Mexico. Attached to the email was a Microsoft Word document containing word for word the text of the email sent by Raniere to Bronfman. The metadata of the Word document received by the DOS victim reflects the creator of the document was Bronfman. On September 18, 2017, Raniere sent Bronfman the following email with the subject line draft. Ms. DOS victim, you are the only person receiving this letter. The overture is against my better judgment, as I feel there is little probability of success, yet more expense, but I am writing you on my client's behalf. If you do not respond affirmatively to this letter by 1 p.m. September 19th, I will need to proceed by previously required. I will then not contact you informally again. My clients want to give you this opportunity to cooperate and minimize the impact on your life. The criminal investigations will increase in number and thoroughness and will not stop until justice is served. This will not go away. The group with which you are involved contains individuals who have already served prison time, others who are currently indicted, and some that face extradition proceedings. The others are under investigation for quite serious crimes. The form of justice to which they subscribe is trial and conviction by media, personal opinion, and abuse of power. They appear to have no issue. Hold on one second. Okay, they appear to have no, I just lost my place, excuse me. They appear to have no issue with committing a crime when it suits them. They use the actions of others to justify this. When the person they target is right or wrong, this method of prosecution is very wrongful. You must separate from them completely to mitigate the effects on yourself. Please divest yourself from the wrongfulness in this group. Please write to me affirmatively by the above deadline, indicating you will cooperate fully. I can also help you with any criminal investigation within the United States. Sincerely, That same day, the DOS victim received an email from Mr. Almedo Gaxiola attaching a second letter as a document in Microsoft Word, which contained nearly exactly the same letter as sent to Bronfman by Raniere, and the metadata of the Word document reflects the creator of that document was Bronfman. So other DOS victims, including Jay, received similar intimidating letters from another attorney, Diego Ruiz Duran, of Bufete Ruiz Duran. On October 11, 2017, 6 days before the New York Times published its reporting on DOS, Jay received an email from Mr. Duran. In the email, Mr. Duran stated that he was taking the liberty of writing to you to let you know that the state's attorney's office in Mexico had issued some directives against you and other individuals. Mr. Duran included a letter in Spanish and a document containing an English translation directing Jay to stop, abstain, and refrain from incurring any type of intimidation, acts of nuisance, or disturbances. Months later, in December 2017, Claire Bronfman released a public statement characterizing DOS as a sorority, stating that it had truly benefited the lives of its members and did so freely. Quote, I find no fault in a group of women, or men for that matter, freely taking a vow of loyalty and friendship with one another to feel safe while pushing back against the fears that have stifled their personal and professional growth, unquote. Raniere also issued a public statement denying his association with DOS and claiming that experts had concluded that members of the sorority hadn't been coerced. Experts, an appeal to authority. Guys, experts had concluded. It's almost like a toothpaste commercial. 3 out of 4 experts had concluded that DOS and the members of the secret sorority hadn't been coerced. After multiple DOS victims spoke publicly about their experiences, Raniere and Nikki Klein, a member of the First Line, considered releasing an edited video of Sarah's branding ceremony. The branding video depicted Sarah naked and being branded and stated as she had been instructed, Master, please brand me, it would be an honor. In May 2019, during the trial against Raniere, the video, Sarah's branding video, was publicly disseminated and broadcast in the Mexican media. So it sounds like Claire Bronfman put that out. Shortly after the media reports were published against DOS, Raniere and Bronfman traveled to Mexico. As media outlets began reporting that the United States Attorney's Office had launched a criminal investigation, Raniere stopped using the phone number he had previously used for over 15 years, and he and Bronfman began using encrypted email accounts. Between approximately November, so now we're getting into their financial crimes. November and March 2018, Raniere and Bronfman conspired to commit identity theft in connection with Raniere's continued use of credit card numbers and bank account numbers belonging to Pamela Kafritz, knowing Kafritz was deceased. This scheme was part of a long-standing practice of deliberately keeping money and assets out of Raniere's name. So Raniere said he was a renunciant. Like he had no money, he had no assets, but I believe he did own half of a home around Albany, New York, I thought. But he was given $66 million to play the commodities market by Claire Bronfman, using Claire Bronfman's money, and lost it, most of it. Bronfman facilitated the scheme by arranging for regular payment of Pam Kafritz's credit card after she died on November 7, 2016. Among the charges on Pam Kafritz's credit card were charges to Amazon, Restoration Hardware, a pet shop, Domino's Pizza, a stock store in Brooklyn, Neiman Marcus, Bergdorf Goodman's. We got to have the good clothes. Bergdorf Goodman's is like in New York City, is like our finest department store, one of them. Saks Direct, Netflix, and various baby companies. In an approximately 135 $1,000 was charged to Pamela Kafritz's credit card from November 7th, 2016, the date of her death, to February 8th, 2018. In addition, disbursements were made from Pamela Kafritz's key bank account after she died, an approximate $320,000, $305 in checks, and $736,856 total disbursements were drawn from Kafritz's account, which included payments to Kathy Russell. So that'll give you a little of the idea of some of the charges against Keith Raniere that really aren't being talked about so much anymore, especially all that financial exploitation of Pam Kafritz, who was really like Keith Raniere's Ghislaine Maxwell until she died of cancer in 2017. She was a very wealthy woman, and they just kept just going into her funds after she had died. Okay, so a lot of this is repetitive from here on out, but I think that will give you an idea. But instead, we have this boo-hooing for, it's like Keith Raniere was just the problem and everyone else was a victim of him. Let's take a listen. I think some of what Mark Vicente has to say on this pushes this idea that Nancy Salzman, the number 2 in NXIVM, was indeed a victim herself. Let's take a listen.
Because I do think that subconsciously she was feeling a lot of stuff that she just wasn't allowed to feel, which is pretty common when people are being abused. And if you listen to my podcast, Letter to the Inside, that's when I address with her the way she...
I got to promote my podcast. I think I'm one of the few people who made almost no money on this. Everyone's like, get my podcast, my documentary. I think almost all my videos from Court Reporting On I think almost all of them are demonetized.
Shut down when he was around. And I said something to the effect of that it was because she had to do it in order to not face the horror of what was actually going on. Dear Nancy, I've told you before, I believe you have been treated with great cruelty. You couldn't even take it in. Perhaps because you yourself have come to believe if you acknowledge abuse, you may be demonized as the abuser and further punished. Well, let me say it on your behalf. I believe you have been abused in ways you cannot even allow yourself to imagine. You are in a permanent...
I believe she's an abuser and she should be demonized. That's my position. And is in no way a victim. She's the number 2. What is he talking about? Wake up. Wake up. Mark Vicente, wake up. This is like Keith Raniere level gobbledygook nonsense.
State of terror. Do you know why you fall asleep in every single meeting with your Lord and Master? It's not because you're disintegrated. I think it's because you're trying to unconsciously check out from the horror. What was the terrible breach/sin you believe you've committed that makes you terrified for...
Or she falls asleep in every class because Keith Raniere is boring and he's droning on and she knows it's a fraud and she just wants her big paycheck. She's the one who pled out first. Remember that. She knew. She's like, this is a criminal fraud. I better save myself and get out. The rest of them were like, we're going to fight this. We're just misunderstood. Allison Mack, etc. We're like, we're going to fight this. It's misunderstood. But she's like, let me plead out before the superseding indictment and get the least amount of time. This is nonsense, Mark. Nonsense.
Your salvation. I just thought you deserved to know who is pulling the strings behind the curtain, not me. I'm one of the few that...
Not him. Not him. He's not pulling the strings. She was pulling the strings behind the curtain with Keith Raniere.
Actually try to help you see the trap you're in.
So in the early days, I was totally honest with Keith, so he learned a lot about my depression. I told him about my relationship problems, and Keith instructed me not to get into another relationship until I worked my dependency issues. Then he became very affectionate toward me and made sexual advances. He abruptly ended our physical relationship, and he asked me to commit to never beginning another relationship with anyone or getting involved with another man without discussing it with him first. He had all of these relationships, but he...
Right, and then you handed over your own daughters to him. I mean, come on. We've never heard this before. You're not allowed to be with anyone else. You have to devote yourself to Keith Raniere while he's with everyone else.
Didn't with me. And it wasn't that I wanted to have a relationship with him, but it always was like, why did he do that to me? And I always felt ashamed of it. But it felt worse when he started having sex with my daughter.
Mom doesn't mind you sleeping with me.
Well, why didn't you warn your daughter away from him? Why did you encourage it? They're not dumb, Tater. They're not dumb. It's something else. Don't mistake this for dumbness. Don't mistake darkness for dumbness.
No, that's for true.
I had mixed feelings. I felt like, in a way, it was a betrayal, but I also felt like that maybe it was wrong to feel that way. Like, I mean, he was supposed to be this very ethical person, and she wasn't a child, but she was.
She was out of college. I thought she gave both her daughters to him. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
After college, she moved back in with me. And Keith wanted her to move out. And he said I was keeping her dependent. It was really bad. He convinced her to move out. And she said immediately he was on her. And
Isn't your job as a mother to protect your daughter? Tony Natale's saying she was your daughter. It's all Keith's fault.
She said he just wanted to get me away from you so he could do that.
Come on. Come on. Who believes this? She was dying to have a kid with him. And she was going to have, because a kid with the smartest man in the world is going to be like the second coming.
She was destroyed by it, and it's fucking terrible. It's like, oh my God, why didn't we just see how bad it really was? There was always like, well, he must know better. He must know what he's doing. He's Keith. I remember having a conversation with him when I was 18, and he wanted me to commit to something, some sort of something kind of relationship with him that I didn't know that I was agreeing to or understood.
Right. There's the other daughter. I was right. Okay, here we go. Here we go.
What it was that he was asking. At some point, it became a breach. I broke some.
So Michelle Salzman is married to the boy that Daniela got punished for having feelings for another man. Is that right, Tony? Thanks for giving us the inside baseball on this. But you have your two daughters and they're both involved with this paunchy middle-aged guy?
Sort of.
That you were involved with? It's a family affair? It's a family affair. It's a family affair. I mean, I could probably make episodes for the next year on all the apologist media that has come out about this diabolical and destructive cult. I love the music under it. Woo.
Commitment to him. And then my relationship with him was broken forever, and I was always supposed to repair it. And you came after me for 20 years. I have to repair this relationship with Keith, and if I don't, I don't know what.
He never liked Michelle. But I didn't realize it was because she wouldn't have sex with him. So.
Who believes that? I have trouble believing that. Pretty much everybody did.
I guess I should have.
I mean, the only way to grow was through this kind of suffering through this predation by Keith. So I don't know. I have a hard time believing it.
He stole her childbearing years. He practically broke her. I mean, she went to college, but she was a baby when she met him. She was not worldly. And she was not strong. Unlike me. You really...
And that's the thing that comes up with Allison Mack. You know, she gave up her childbearing years to Keith Raniere. And I mean, I guess, I don't know. What is she going to do? IFV? I don't know. IVF, excuse me. IVF with Frank Mink. I mean, that's never discussed in this podcast. But you can't miss it. It's such a... I mean, it's one of the reasons when your mother introduces you to a man and says he's safe, and not only safe, that you'll gain things from him, and grooms you for the cult that you're starting together. This is one of the reasons why Lauren Salzman got no prison time. She was groomed into it by her family.
Affected my family badly. And I let that happen.
She didn't let it happen. She made it happen. She was a part of it.
I couldn't see it.
She couldn't see it. She was getting rich from it. She had a nursing degree, Nancy Salzman. She was like a small-time nurse with a lot of talent in hypnotizing people. And Keith Raniere honed in on her talent and exploited it for hypnotizing and having undue influence over people. But she was very clever to plead out before the superseding indictment. It was her daughter who testified so brilliantly against the cult, not Nancy Salzman. Her daughter gave up the info. And I'm curious to know what their relationship is like now.
I think it was like an experiment with him. I started thinking that he enjoyed hurting us. He just wanted to see how far he could push us.
He enjoyed hurting us, but we didn't enjoy hurting other people. We'll circle back to this sometime soon. We've been going for almost 2 hours, and I have to take care of my bestie's cat. So I think we've covered it. Yeah, she had a NLP practice. This was I believe that's from The Vow, part 2, recently. Recently. I think it was filmed before she went to prison. For a short time. I think you can see the ankle bracelet on her anklet. That is what I have for today, guys. Please hit the thumbs up, support the channel, share this episode, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of Nancy Salzman. If you're listening to the Allison Mack podcast, let me know what you think of it. Am I right? Am I wrong on what I'm saying? Did you know about some of the things in this episode, let me know. Please support the channel. Venmo, buy me a coffee. Patreon, all great ways to support the channel. Links are in the description of this and every episode. Have a great Sunday night and terrific Monday morning, guys. I'll see you tomorrow at 6. See you then.
Mic check, Roberta strides through the static haze. True crime Gotham where the shadows play their plays. Fraudsters fold when a spotlight beams. Fact focused queen busting propaganda schemes. Glass shatter lies echoes through the streets. Standing for victims, giving voice their beats. NYC Post, truth sharp as night. Roberta exposing she's the anti-fraud light. Hard cash warrior, dissecting state and defense. Twisted innocence, claims breaking pretense. Gotham's truth seeker cuts clean with the blade. Facts in the forefront, no justice gets swayed. Cold facts drip heavy, real talk unfurls. Cracking cases open like oysters with pearls. Innocence gimmicks crumble to dust in the wind. For victims, her creed, justice till the end. Headphones blazing, she drops heavy artillery. Narratives twisted, meet blunt object civility. Roberta got receipts that unravel the ploy. Exposing the lies these fraudsters deploy. Glass shatters